You're welcome back. This is still TV3 New Days. Time now for the newspaper review. We'll start off with the Ghanaian Times, and it says dual citizenship case. Assin North MP disqualified. Court orders EC to conduct fresh election, and that's a photo of now we can say former Assin North MP, Mr. James Jachi on there. And you know, there's been a contention as to whether it was actually an issue of dual citizenship or more of allegiance, to one country over the other. We'll get into that as the minority has been speaking, the majority as well has been speaking, and we'll show you some footage from the press conferences that they both held at Parliament yesterday. But moving on, minority vows to contest the decision. That's on page 4 of the Ghanaian Times. And also mid-year budget review. No new taxes will be introduced as Finance Minister addresses Parliament today. We're expecting that to happen from 10 a.m. onwards. And so you should stick and stay with us right here on TV3 as we apprise you of what happens in Parliament. Opuni's case, Supreme Court stops judge from hearing 271 million Ghana cedis fertilizer deal case. And GHS warns of severe third wave of COVID-19 outbreak, and the fact that, in fact, we're recording an increased number of cases, especially in our schools. Let's move on now to the Daily Graphic, and we have Mr. Yabwa Binga, someone who's the communications director of the NPP. His photo is on there. Mr. James Jachi who is the NDC candidate for Assin North, and of course, before yesterday, he was the MP for the constituency until the court declared that fresh elections should be held in that constituency. And Mr. Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo is the national chairman of the NDC. And it says NPP NDC for by-election as Cape Coast Court announced Assin North election. And you'll find that on page 3 of the Daily Graphic. President Akufo-Addo commences action on petition to remove Chief Justice. That's on page 16. And media budget today, economists want public sector inefficiencies tackled. And let's move on now to the Business Finder. And it says stimulus packages critical to overcome ravages of pandemic. Economists, donor community, and that is what they are saying, with hopes of hearing more on that when the finance minister appears in Parliament later this morning. Licobag debunks claim of unpaid cocoa farmers, and Ecobank, AUDA, NEPAD passed out over 200 MSME graduates. The Daily Guide, also very big on their front page, is the issue with regards to the Assin North MP, and it says NDC, Canada and Court MP axed by election looms. Also, AG briefs MPs on high-profile murders. NDC gurus reviving vigilante task force, and Opuni judge pushed out. Koku Anyidoho responds to sack, and yesterday there was a letter, an official letter from the NDC indicating that it had sacked, Koku Anyidoho from the party. Now, also Business and Financial Times, IMF projects further widening of deficits to 13.9% as it casts doubt over tax administration measures. GRA NIC to phase out old insurance billing system at ports, and mid-year budget review. 1 million promised jobs for the youth must be sustainable. Joining me in the studios this morning is lawyer Abraham Amaliba, and he's from the NDC legal team. And of course, at a point was very close to this particular issue with regards to Assin North and the court case over the eligibility of the MP at the time when he filed nomination. He's here with us in the studios. Good morning. How are you doing? I'm
very well. I'm fine.
Okay. I'm not bad. Thank you very much. Very slow morning, I must say. The weather is really, really slow, but it is well. Also joining us this morning is Dennis Miracles Abuaji. He is a former MCE for Equiapim North. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning, Bella. How
Everything
are we doing?
okay?
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Yeah?
Very bright, shining morning.
Is it?
Yes.
It's very slow for me.
It depends on where you are standing. And what
well, I mean, of course, for you, I guess. But I mean, not to celebrate too early because there's going to be a by-election. We're not sure who is winning anyway.
Well, once rule of law is reigning, we're excited about that. That's the first step.
Speaking of which, let's give you some more insight on this particular issue. And so I'll take you back to the court ruling yesterday from the Cape Coast High Court that declared that the Assin North constituency would have to undergo fresh elections to elect its MP after it indicated that the then Assin North MP, Mr. Jachi Kwesin, had gone contrary to the Constitution. And so take a look at that and let's hear what the minority had to say about it, because they are not happy. They describe this as a travesty of justice, and the majority also responded in a similar manner. Let's listen.
We in the minority remain unshaken. We are confident that it is our seat, it will remain our seat. Our first is to use the same legal processes and legal forum and opportunities available within the Constitution. We will contest the ruling. The judge erred both in law and in fact. It's a travesty of justice. But what is worrying, we don't want to believe that the courts of Ghana have been captured and that the courts of Ghana have become forums being used surreptitiously to tilt the balance of power. We are equal, 137, 137. What is happening is the courts now being used to tilt the balance of power and to weaken time-tested historical notion of checks and balances. We are told that even when the Supreme Court of Ghana directed the Honorable Kwesi and his legal team to go and file appropriate legal motions for the matter to be referred to the Supreme Court, he was denied that. Danger begets our democracy with the developments happening. But as I've assured you, we remain unshaken, we remain very resolved, and cooperation will suffer.
That is his wild dream. We believe that he set out to serve the people of this country. And let no any member of this chamber think that he has powers of his own. It is the people of this country who has given us the mandate to represent them. So if you're not going to do the bidding of the people of this country, and government is projecting an agenda to bring welfare to the people of this country, and they are going to prosecute an obstructionist agenda, so be it. But we are determined to ensure that the welfare promised by His Excellency the President and the agenda of delivering welfare to the good people of this country, we will do it. It's important for us to recognize that, if you recall, even before we were sworn in to be part of the 8th Parliament, ab initio in the chamber, we as members of the majority had raised issue of eligibility related to the Assin North Member of Parliament elect then. If you recall, there were dramatic representation even from our side, and we had cautioned the implication of that decision for the member to sit in and be part of that decision making on that day. Each one of you will bear witness. And so today we have been vindicated.
And that is Honorable Anot Dompre. He's the Majority Chief Whip in Parliament. And also earlier we heard from the Minority Leader in Parliament, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, concerning this particular issue. I'll start off with Lawyer Ibrahim Amaliba. And even before I get into, what he has to say, I'll just read a bit of, something relating to him and the fact that he was the defendant's lawyer in this case. And at a point, he pulled out. So it says here that Lawyer Ibrahim Amaliba, who was one of the lawyers defending the NDC's embattled Member of Parliament for the Assin North constituency in the Central Region, James Jachi Kwesi, in the dual citizenship case, has filed an application to withdraw his services. This was sometime in May 2021. Now, he cited comments made by the judge in previous hearings, which he believed might constitute bias. And so Mr. Amaliba on Tuesday, May 18, moved for the judge to recuse himself from making further statements in open court, which appeared to indicate a predetermined outcome of the substantive case. And I'll just quote a bit of what he said, that although your lordship refused my prayer to recuse yourself on grounds inter alia, that you don't remember ever making the alleged comment, I remain of the strong conviction that there's a real likelihood of bias, and my continuous presence in the matter as counsel with such a conviction will not augur well for the interest of my client and administration of justice. And so he even mentioned that, his representation of the client could hurt his client's chances given the likelihood of bias. Now, I want to come to him because regardless of what he may have thought at the beginning, this is where we are, where, of course, the High Court now has ruled, saying that, you know, the Constitution, you know, was broken at a point with regards to filing of nomination by the Assin North MP at that point. And so that is why they are ordering for fresh elections. Do you feel vindicated to some extent based on your earlier concerns?
Let me start by saying good morning to your viewers. I feel vindicated, and I must also add that I anticipated this ruling. It doesn't come to me as a shock. I anticipated the judgment rather. It doesn't come to me as a shock. This is what I expected, and it has come to pass. Based on these same concerns that you had earlier? Exactly, and then those concerns have metamorphosed into the judgment. So I'm not surprised. I think that I anticipated this. I told a lot of people that this was going to be the outcome. And those who are listening and have interacted with them would attest to the fact that I anticipated this ruling. We've gone past that stage where he said he wasn't going to recuse himself, and then he continued with the case. This judgment, for me, is an assault on the good people of Assin North. Why am I saying this? There were a lot of procedural errors that were committed by the judge in this matter. See, the issue of whether or not a person owes allegiance to another country other than Ghana is a matter for interpretation. And it's for the Supreme Court that has the jurisdiction to do the interpretation of our constitutional provisions. It doesn't lie in the High Court to do that interpretation. So we raised the issue that the judge should refer the matter to the Supreme Court for interpretation. He refused. You know what? This was going to be a good opportunity for the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement and interpret the difference between what is allegiance and what is citizenship. You find in the Constitution sometimes don't be a citizen of Ghana, sometimes don't owe allegiance. And for our viewers, an example is people leave Ghana through green card, end up in the U.S., and they are in the U.S. Army. Do they become citizens? No. They swear an oath of allegiance to the U.S. to enable them go into the U.S. Army. So there's a clear distinction between owing allegiance and being a citizen. And this would have been an opportunity for the Supreme Court to make that pronouncement. The judge says that, oh, that provision has already been interpreted. And you know what he's talking about? He's talking about Zenato's case, which went to the Supreme Court. But Zenato's case is about the non-registration, somebody who didn't register and wanted to contest as an MP. Yeah. That has nothing to do with allegiance. This James Kwesi, for him, he has already registered. So his name is in the register. So you can't use that case to apply it to this current case. And that's what he did. Now the issue was, at what time would we say that a person who is seeking to contest as a member of parliament is required to denounce his allegiance? The petitioner went to court and said that it should be at the time of nominations or at the time of when the EC opens the pool. And that is in line with the Zenato case. And we are saying that no. When you look at the PNDC Law 284, that's the People's Representation Act, Section 20, 1D, says that it should be at the time of elections. Then when you say that, then they will say that, oh, election is a process. It's not an event. And so it starts from nomination, you picking the nomination form. And I ask the question, if you are not a member, if you don't have a register, if you don't have a voting card, you can also be a member of parliament. So why did you chop off, if you say it's a process, why did you chop off registration? Then send it to the registration then. Send it to the time of registration then. There's no law that says that it is at the time of nomination. But there's a law that says that it's the time of elections. And the PNDC law is clear on that. Now, when you look at the Constitution, it says that a person shall not become a member of parliament if he owes allegiance to another country other than Ghana. Now, I then ask the question, I even asked the judge a rhetorical question. My lord, at what point would they say you are a judge? Is it when the president announces your name or when you take the oath of office? And I said, my lord, you don't need to answer this question because you don't answer questions. It's at the time you take the oath. So you become a member of parliament when you take the oath. Now, there's a reason for this law because they don't want you to sit in parliament and have access to classified information and then you send it out to another country. Now, tell me, Bella, tell me, how does going to pick a nomination form make that person dangerous to our country? When you go and pick a nomination form, how does that give you access to information? The framers of the Constitution intended that before you sit in Parliament, you should have renounced your citizenship, and not when you are going to pick a nomination form.
Okay.
So, all these things, we lost the opportunity for the Supreme Court to deal with them. And one other thing that was also a matter of procedural error was when he said that he wasn't going to take evidence. And you notice that all the election petitions, parliamentary election petition, is this one that has concluded. Because he refused that he will not let the respondent or the parties go into the witness box to talk. So I tell my lord, when I was in the case, my lord, just allow, before you take your judgment or you make your judgment, just allow the man to enter the witness box and tell his side of the story. After that, you can rule. He said no. For him, we should write legal arguments and then he will rule. Because the issue of allegiance is a matter of foreign law. You need experts. You need somebody from, say, the Canadian embassy. Come and tell us in Canada, allegiance and citizenship. How is it? Does it go together or they are separate? You need somebody to give evidence. That one he refused, that he will not take evidence. So I am saying that there have been procedural errors in this matter. And I think that the people of Assin North have been shortchanged.
But the concern has been that at the time when he filed for nominations, which was between the 5th and the 9th of October, he said that he had already filed for a renunciation of his, citizenship to Canada. And so that in itself was enough to give him the opportunity. And again, he was able to go through the process anyway. And so that was the argument from the Assin North's, legal angle. But the judge is saying that that was in itself wrong. And you are saying that that's a problem because then they did not have the documents to show at the time when he was filing for nominations that he had renounced. It was only an application that had been put forward, hoping to receive that certificate of renunciation. If at the time that he filed, he had not gotten that certificate, then clearly he was breaching the Constitution.
And I have sat here to say that there's no law that says that it is at the time of nomination that you should renounce. I have sat here and quoted PND's law 284, section 21D. I have quoted that law to say that the time for you to renounce is at the time of elections, not at the time of nominations. And that's why I feel the judge erred by pegging it, by making the cutoff point at the time of nomination when it's at the time of elections, by the law, by the PND's law. Now, do you know that the youth of Assin, some youth of Assin North, actually petitioned the EC over this matter?
Yeah.
So the EC called the man to have interactions and for him to show proof. And at that point, he showed proof of his certificate. And the EC cleared him to take part.
But is that not an error in itself? Because even before the youth had petitioned the EC, should the EC not have done due diligence to ensure that whoever is filing for nominations was actually going according to the Constitution? And maybe if they had detected at that point that he had not received his certificate, then they could have prevented him from going ahead.
No, you swear an affidavit, which, yes, you swear a statutory declaration, a statutory declaration. And when you swear it, you depose to it that you are not a citizen of any other country but Ghana. He did that. He did that.
But he still had not received his certificate at that time, had he?
Yes, he hadn't because he had put in the process.
So clearly that means that around that time he was still a citizen of Canada, no?
And I'm saying that you don't peg it at the time of nomination.
Okay.
Haven't I told you that how does picking a nomination form make somebody a danger to our country?
But which is why I'm asking that if the EC, then the EC should have done due diligence. I get what you mean by that.
But the EC will look at the documents, which are your statutory declaration and then the form you fill. The EC does not ask you to add additional documents. So when the EC look at it and it is okay, they let you go. But if people have additional information, like this a youth of Assin, they then petitioned, and the EC said, so then come and show us. At that point, he pulled out the certificate. Now, because the PNDC law says that it is at the time of elections, and elections is on the 7th December, the EC said that, okay, you can
go ahead with it.
And do.
Okay. Okay. Let me bring you in, because the minority is saying that the courts are being used to tilt the balance of power in Parliament. And, you know, these accusations have been coming in, you know, very subtly, because there's always been that worry that, you know, the NPP, especially, or the government in power, you know, the party in power was trying to find ways to break that 137 balance so that they can have more people in Parliament, then they can have the majority. What do you say to this accusation?
Bella, good morning. And before I respond to this, please permit me. Let me use just 1 minute to make this statement. You know, there's an iron steel company on the Konongo area, and it's quite interesting that a private company would leave the Tema enclave to go all the way to Konongo. You know, so last weekend I stopped there to find out exactly, you know, why they decided to set up in the Konongo area. And their reason is quite interesting. What they are saying is that, you know, all these industries, iron steel companies are centered in Tema. And so we buy all these iron rods and all the things from Tema and transport all the way from here to the northern sector of the country, Ashanti, Bronga, Hafo. Sometimes it gets very expensive. And even the management and handling of these things. And then the supply, you know, chain in that area also becomes quite difficult. So they decided to set up around the middle belt of the country so they can serve from Ashanti upwards towards the northern region. I found it quite interesting. But what is quite intriguing is that last Saturday, for the first time in this country, an angle iron bar was produced locally here in Ghana. Something that we've never had before. Because all these companies, you know, import into the country, and, you know, quite expensive, the cost of importation, the effects that it has on our CD and all of that. Okay. So I think we need to really acknowledge Ryder Steel, Majid and his team. This
is advertisement.
No, it is not.
And
it is not.
Unfortunately, we cannot allow that on the show.
This is the industries and the economy that we talk about. The president was there last year. President was there last year to sort of roll them onto the one district, one factory.
Okay. All right.
And they're employing thousands of young people in the Konongo, Kumasi area.
Okay.
And so
I'm taking all this from your time, by the way.
Sure, no problem.
Carry on.
Because I think it's very important. It's very, very important. Now, back to the Assin North issue. Bella, I think the NDC leadership and their lawyers are doing a lot of disservice to their followers. And they've been doing this to them for a long while, emanating from the activities preceding elections 2020 and then post-elections 2020. They always try to lead their followers on a certain wild goose chase and get them into an anticlimax that sort of, I think it's quite unfair to the emotions and sentiments of these followers. First of all, I have read the judgment, 64-page judgment. Every single issue that the NDC are raising, including the issues that my senior brother, Lawyer Amaliba, has raised this morning, have been addressed explicitly in the ruling. All of them. I do not understand why the NDC, knowing that these issues have been addressed by the judge, consistently tries to, you know, deceive their followers to think that they have a case in this matter. First of all, the MPP did not take the decision and are not taking the decision on this Assin North candidates, NDC candidates, post-elections. These issues are issues that we have raised long before the elections. We have videos and audio and pictures and so many instances during the campaign raising the issues with the illegality of the NDC candidate in Assin North. In fact, there's a video I'll share with you where Honorable Kenneth Japan was standing on a campaign platform and he said it publicly, I'm sure you've seen it. He said, if you like, let him win. He is a Canadian citizen. We have evidence to show that he has dual citizenship and he does not qualify to contest in our elections in Ghana because our laws bar them. And if he wins, he won't even spend 2 months because we will take him up in court. How do you say that we are using the court to tell the balance of power because it's 137, 137? We knew this before the elections. Rather, the NDC followers should be calling their lawyers out and calling their leadership out and ask them why they sit down and allow a member of their party who has question mark on his citizenship to contest an election that they know that the laws of this country do not allow. Now, the issue
How is there a question mark? He renounced, or he started the process in 2019. And so he also gave an explanation as to why there was a delay, because usually it will take about 6 months for him to get his certificate. But because of lockdown, he said that it was an administration error because then the Canadian government was not able to process his documents on time. But at least just the fact that he had filed in 2019, the process had begun.
It has been addressed. Now, this is what the judge said, and I'm happy lawyer, refers to the PNDC law. The PNDC law clearly states that a person shall not be qualified to be a member of parliament if he owes allegiance to a country other than Ghana. And then the NDC, try to do gymnastics with this with their members and say that citizenship and allegiance are different. You see, every citizen of a country, anybody that acquires citizenship of a country, before your certificate is handed over to you, you swear an oath of allegiance everywhere, including Ghana. So by virtue of being a citizen of Canada, you've already sworn the oath of allegiance to the Canadian people. So the two are together. You cannot separate citizenship and allegiance. You can say that I am allegiant to Togo, but probably not a citizen of Togo. But if I'm a citizen of Togo, I am allegiant to Togo. That is a fact.
But that is your interpretation.
No.
Which is why they were asking that it be forwarded to the Supreme Court.
It is not my interpretation. No, it is not my interpretation. I am saying that if you want to acquire citizenship of another country, usually they go before a judge. They give you the Bible, the Quran, or the cross. You put your hands on it, lift your hands, and swear the oath of allegiance to that country. Then they grant you your certificate of citizenship or passport or whatever. So, by virtue of being a citizen of any country that you applied for, you have allegiance to that country. That is fact.
Okay.
Now, the second bit that the NDC lawyers and their leaders are not telling their followers is that there is an elections regulation, a public elections regulations constitutional instrument for 2020 that we use to guide our elections. Now, that CI lifted the entire PNDC law, okay, 284, and then continue to say that a candidate for presidential and parliamentary election shall, at the time of nomination, at the time of nomination of the candidate, A, deliver or cause to be delivered to the returning officer, I, a statutory declaration stating that the candidate is qualified to be elected as president or a member of parliament and is not disqualified from being elected as such. Now, the CI is saying that before you get yourself nominated, it is a pre-requirement. It is not a post-requirement. Before you put yourself up for nomination as a candidate in the 2020 elections, be sure that there are no encumbrances on you which bars you or disqualifies you from being a member of parliament or president. Now let's come back to the citizenship question. At the time of nomination, and I am standing on the regulations, at the time of nomination, was he qualified or disqualified from being a member of parliament? The answer is he was disqualified from being a member of parliament because as at 9th of October, he was still a citizen of Canada. In fact, he claims, and it's also in the judgment, that he started the processes of renunciation in December 2019. Fair enough. But as at January, February, March 2020, as at October 9th, 2020, he had not received any certificate, any confirmation, approval or disapproval of his application for renunciation. Don't forget, the Canadian government has signed to the UN Convention of ensuring that no individual on the face of this earth becomes stateless. Now, countries who have signed to this convention, what happens is, when you apply for renunciations, they make sure that they scrutinize it, have evidence from you indicating that you are holding citizenship of another country, or you have approval for another country to grant you citizenship before they will give you approval for renunciation. Because if they don't do that, what will happen is there are people on the face of earth today who would love to be stateless, so that no laws will apply to them and they could do their things. So these countries, including Canada, ensure that when you apply, you do not automatically lose your citizenship of Canada until they have granted you the approval. What it means is that after the 9th of October, Honorable Kwesi could have been denied the renunciation application. Indeed, the only evidence that he and his lawyers presented to the courts was the certificate of renunciation, which was granted to him in November. Now, when you read the certificate of renunciation, I'll read it to you with your permission. This is what the certificate says. This is to certify that the person named above has formally renounced his Canadian citizenship and pursuant to the Citizenship Act will cease to be a citizen on 26 November 2020. And when you read the ruling, the judge says that this is where the first respondent, that is Honorable Kwesi's case, was destroyed. He used the exact words. He said, this is where his case was destroyed. And with your permission again, I'll probably take you through exactly what he said.
Whilst you do that, and back to the same issue, which is what the minority is saying, that we are confusing citizenship and allegiance, which is why they wanted a further explanation of Article 92A, because they wanted to understand from the Supreme Court their interpretation.
I'll address that.
Because we were using both interchangeably when it was wrong.
I am of the view that they are only playing gymnastics with their followers. Because, like I said, if I want to apply to be a citizen of US, when I go through all the application processes, finally, before my citizenship is granted to me, I go before a judge. I hold the Bible, which I believe in, place my hands on it, and I'll swear allegiance. There is nobody who has been granted citizenship of any country that doesn't swear that oath of allegiance. It means then that you cannot be a citizen of a country and not have allegiance to that country. It doesn't even make sense. Simple logic. That doesn't even need legal interpretation.
Yesterday, the communications officer of the NDC, Mr. Sammy Jemfi, made some accusations again, and he talked about the shameful conduct of the registrar of the High Court in Cape Coast, and he's saying that as at the morning when the judgment was going to be passed, the legal, side of Honorable Justice Kwesi had tried to at least, file a formal application to urge the judge to refer the matter to the Supreme Court. Now, the registrar's office is supposed to open at 8 a.m. As at 9 a.m., there was still nobody in that office. And so he felt, and as a party, they felt that it was a deliberate attempt to delay the process so that the judge can go ahead and give his verdict regardless. And so he thought that was unfair. What do you say to this?
I'll address that finally. Let me finish with this. So what the judge said with the evidence that the lawyers presented was that the above information from the certificate of renunciation without more is completely conclusive. It caused the damage and destroyed the first respondent's case. Indeed, it settles any ambiguity surrounding when the renunciation of first respondent's Canadian citizenship took effect. So this is what the judge is saying. You brought evidence that, listen, I had applied for my renunciation. So for me, I think that as at the time I filed, I wasn't a Canadian citizen. The certificate that the Canadians are giving you is that as at 26 November, in fact, on the 9th of 25th November, you could have traveled on their passport. If something happened to you in Ghana, their embassy here could have come for you and taken you back to your country. Because as at 25th November, you were their citizen. That's what they are telling you. So for us, from where we sit, the evidence that the Canadians are giving us is that, listen, as at 26th November, this gentleman was our citizen. It settles it. No ambiguity. Now, the next leg is where they are saying that, well, allegiance, citizenship. I am saying that by virtue of being a citizen, you have sworn an oath of allegiance. And he knows that. It is a fact to that particular country. You can be allegiant to a particular country, but not necessarily a citizen. Okay? But once you're a citizen of a country, you are allegiant to that country. It's syllogism, deductive logic. If be, then kill. Not be, not kill.
Was there a deliberate attempt then to delay
to the NDC leadership, now led by Sammy Jemfi, let me tell you, no serious political party in Ghana today should go through what Honorable Kwesi is going through. Why do you, as leaders of a political party, knowing that, these parliamentary nominations, the political parties file and block. So MPP, NDC, we put all together and then we file. What sort of due diligence did you do on each of your candidates? How did you check their backgrounds? At the MPP headquarters, we had the whole committee and the whole secretariat that dealt with each of the 275 applicants, candidates that we had, to make sure that any candidate with such encumbrances will be dealt with and ensure that there are no, hooks.
And you are saying you've done this over time?
We've learned from Abu Dramani.
Because I was going to refer to that. Since you also have made similar mistakes in the past.
Since Abu Dramani, I don't see how anybody, because that was a landmark judgment. That was a judgment that set the tone for who actually could be held responsible for these things. And for me, I applaud the national chairman, John Boadu, Fedi Blaise, Samir Okunanabi, and KJFUA for the sort of system they've put in place for our party. The NDC leaders, in their attempt to run away from their failure, in their attempt to hide their faces in the sun by virtue of not putting in place the proper administrative processes, are trying to blame the judges. Now, the issue of you trying to file something, the processes haven't ended yet. And I would probably call on, maybe lawyers should advise the leadership of the NDC. They should stop this posture of consistently running institutions down once things don't go in their favor. They did the same to the Electoral Commission. They did the same to the... Recently, when they were trying to hold their demonstration, they had a few setbacks. The national youth organizer of the NDC, Pablo, who is my very good friend, went on his Facebook wall, running down the IGP and running down the police about how they are being used by a political system. The same thing they are saying about the judiciary. How they are being used by the political system here and there. Along the line, when they met the IGP, and then the IGP granted them whatever it is that they were requesting for, and they went to their demonstration. The next morning, he went to his Facebook wall, praising the IGP, telling us about how he's professional and how his demeanor was good and all of that. Everything doesn't have to go in their favor. They should admit that the leadership of the party, there's something wrong. They should admit that and begin to work on that.
But if now, the office is supposed to be open at 8 a.m. and he says that as at 9 a.m. there was still nobody at that office.
Every lawyer knows that. Every lawyer knows that.
Is that not a problem?
Every lawyer knows that the judge who is coming from the house and has his judgment to come and read in that office has no knowledge of what is going on in a certain office. For him, he has set a date. I'm landing. He has set a date to come and give his ruling. You are walking about in a certain office to file a certain process. The judge comes to sit. As at the time he sat, there was no process filed. And now you are accusing the judge, calling him shameful, calling him names, saying that power is being used to tilt what? When he came to do his work, you failed to do your work. You waited till the morning that the judge is coming to do the ruling before you realized that you could file for a particular process. He has come to get his work done. For me, I think that the NDC should stop the name calling of the judges. All they need to do is that there are still provisions in the law for them to utilize. They should take advantage of those provisions. They can still go to the Supreme Court for an interpretation. I know the lawyers can apply for a stay of execution. They can appeal, whatever it is that
which they have indicated they will. Let me bring lawyer in, because lawyer, that's the concern as well, that should the party not have checked all of these to ensure that to avoid all this, because in the long run, it is your party that is losing one member in parliament at this moment. And so we don't have that balance anymore. And so should you not have checked all of these things before? I know you have said that it is at the time of elections that all of this matters. But at the same time, could we not have avoided this matter if during the filing of, nominations for primaries, the party had made sure that all these details had been put in place just to ensure that everybody is protected in the long run?
Bella, if you allow yourself to be swayed by this
I'm not allowing myself to be swayed. I'm asking you a question. It was a question I was going to ask you anyway, which is a concern for many. So please respond to that.
This convoluted argument that is put across is mind-boggling, Bella.
Why do you say so?
You raise an issue. We raise an issue of foreign law. He said, this is what the judge has said. You raise an issue of referring to the Supreme Court. This is what the judge has said. If the judge at the High Court was the all in all, and what he says is the gospel truth, would there have been a Supreme Court? You see that this place is silent. We raise concerns about the procedural errors committed by an officer. Then you use that same public officer's conduct that we are questioning to justify your arguments. Where does this come from? Haven't we said that the issues, the conclusions that the judge came to We're wrong. They said, this is what the judge said. Did we go or did we come? If that is what the judge said, did we go or did we come? Then we shouldn't have even been here to even have any discussion. So you cannot use the same judge whose conduct is being questioned as your justification. Convoluted argument. And you are all over the place attacking NDC leadership. On what basis? The actions of the registry. Bella, if you were following this case from its beginning, this is not the first time. I, Abraham Amalba, when I was on the case and there was an injunction application, and I predicted that it's likely the injunction application will not go my way. So let me prepare and arm myself with processes, which is allowed. That's what a good lawyer should do. Process, have your process. So that when he finishes, I'll just walk to the registry. You are aware that that registry was put at the lock and key. You are aware. And when they are talking about injustice meted out to people, you say they are accusing the judge. Who is accusing the judge? We are saying that the registry. And didn't we mention the name of the registrar?
Yeah.
So this kind of argument, which does not, relate to the issues, and you are all over in 6s and 7s, does not help the viewer. In this particular issue, when the Supreme Court gave us a leeway that we could go and file an application to ask to refer, that night our lawyers stayed up and prepared the documents. When I was in that case, I have actually filed processes, and in fact, not me alone, even Frank David has filed processes and served on me early in the morning before we entered court. In fact, in Frank David's own, when he filed, whilst the judge was entering and court rise, I saw somebody handing over. So I was up when they handed over to me. How come that when it comes to critical applications, which would inure to the benefit of the respondent, the registry closes? And you say we are building Ghana with that? You are building Ghana with such corrupt conduct by the registry, and we shouldn't talk about it.
How is it corrupt? I mean,
when I say corrupt, corruption is not only giving money.
No, I get you, of course.
That's conduct. How come that when there is no difficult application, let me put it that way, the registry is open. I have filed on those occasions. I'm saying that, and I'll give you an example. Frank David have filed a process and served me. How come that those days the registry was not closed? So I expect him, as a communicator for the government, to condemn those acts. Look, let me tell you, empires have collapsed. Songhai Empire has collapsed. Mali Empire has collapsed. Even Ghana Empire has collapsed, let alone governments. You won't be in government all over, all along. You won't be in government. Kingdoms have collapsed. Now when it turns and you are on the other side, and we are also influencing the closure of registries, will you be happy? That's the question we should ask.
But are you saying that they influence the closure of the registry? But we don't have any facts to indicate that.
So how come, apart, who would have an influence over closure of a registry when the NDC is always going to file a process? It is locked. You've not, in this matter, you've not heard that when the NPP2 are going to file a process, it is locked.
Okay.
What would be your logical conclusion?
Moving forward,
I am saying that empires have collapsed, so
I understand,
empires
lawyer.
this government will go.
Who should
one day
be held responsible? Because we cannot keep making these mistakes. I mean, we've seen what happened in the late, Dramani's issue, where he was even jailed 2 years for a similar matter. And now we've come to the same issue again. And yet we are not getting anybody to be held responsible for these mistakes. Should it be the Electoral Commission ensuring that even from the time of filing, maybe that person should have gotten that certificate of renunciation. Should it be the parties that should be held responsible for this moving forward so that we will not get back to this particular situation in the near future?
Bella, the answer to your question is that if we had this matter referred to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court makes a pronouncement, then we are all guided. Why? I, sitting down as a lawyer, would advise that, PNDC law, section 21D, says that it's at the time of elections. They say that it's at the time of nominations. That is a contention between the two parties. And we said that, look, this matter is so important and critical. Send it to the Supreme Court. So that when they interpret, we know that when the Supreme Court speaks, it's final. That will have helped this process. This don't blame the EC. This don't blame any political party, because we are guided by laws. And I've told you what the PNDC law says. But did we have an opportunity to ensure that this matter, a closure is brought to this matter? The answer is yes. But we've flapped it.
But you say you're going to appeal.
Yes.
And so is that not an opportunity to probably get that interpretation from the Supreme Court?
So by now we wouldn't have been appealing again. But the appeal is coming. We have read the processes yesterday night. All lawyers who are coming for the meeting today were up reading the process, the judgment. Today we are meeting, and then I know for sure that an appeal is going to be filed. But what other processes will be filed to stay the situation, the status quo, is what the details that we'll have to find out from our meeting. So nobody has been negligent. Nobody has shortchanged any supporter of the NDC. We are saying that it is wrong for the judge to refuse to refer the matter to the Supreme Court. How is that a criticism? A criticism?
Okay. Well, we'll await the details and see how that goes. Of course, with the NDC saying that they are getting ready to file an appeal with regards to this particular issue. But let's just move on before time, goes by quickly. The finance minister is expected to speak this morning. Already, we've been told that some 1 million jobs are expected to be created. And now we've also been told that no new taxes will be introduced. What are your expectations? And of course, you are in power, so I would come to you so we can wrap up with that. But Lawyer Maliba, speak to me on this briefly so we can wrap up.
Why? Is there anybody in this country who still believes this administration and believe the president when the president says that there will be 1 million jobs? So people are still in this country believing the president?
Are you saying it's not possible to create 1 million jobs?
Has the president fulfilled his promise that he will build 88 hospitals where he now catapulted to 101? Look, the reputation of a person comes before him. When I was coming here, and you got to know I was coming here, I'm sure you had a certain view of me before I even arrived. The president's reputation comes before him. He's making a promise that I'll give you 1 million jobs, and you are already excited. This is a man who couldn't even fulfill a promise to God, his own God. The cathedral, what has happened? So I have no confidence. Indeed, just yesterday or 2 days ago, I have seen, I don't know when Baumia spoke about it, he says that the economy has been possessed by evil demons and principalities. What kind of governance is that? How come, where did we go wrong as a nation for the Satan to give us a government which is now becoming a comic relief? When did we get to that point? A vice president who wants to be president is telling the people of Ghana that principalities and demons. This was a man who said he was an economic messiah. How did he deteriorate to this point? So please, these are what? Have you ever seen the president not promising? Even this last Ghana fellow Ghanaians, he promised again. The promises the president has given, has he fulfilled it? So I am skeptical about this 1 million jobs.
Okay.
His own God
Remember, they had mentioned prior to the elections that they had created some 2 million jobs. I understand that came under contention, but I'm just saying that, they had mentioned that they had created 2 million jobs. Let me come to you, Dennis, so that we can wrap up on this, because it's not just about the 1 million jobs. We're also looking at the introduction of those new taxes and the review of the old taxes, and how that has even, benefited the fight against COVID-19. And I'm sure that the finance minister will touch on that. But if you can give us some insight as to what exactly we should expect. Lawyer Abraham Amaliba says that it's all promises and no action.
Bella, unfortunately for Lawyer, unlike the NDC, those of us who are citizens of this country choose to be optimistic and choose to lay our support and cooperation with the leadership of the country at every point in time, because we give them the mandate to do so. The MPP took over a country in 2017 where we couldn't even keep our power on for almost 3 to 4 years, for which reason you had industry shutting down, some running at half capacity. Jobs were being, were being lost, people were being laid off. We had an economy where we had to run to the IMF for a bailout, and so they had to put a freeze on employment for public sector.
The minority saying we should go back to the IMF anyway,
yes, I'll come to that. We had an economy where we had to take off so many privileges that the citizens were enjoying. For example, teachers' allowances, nurses' allowances. We had an economy where almost about 90,000 of our children were dropping out of school because they couldn't afford it by virtue of poverty.
Okay.
We had an economy where we could not support employment and we could not support industry. Fast forward, taking over from 2017 to 2019 and early part of 2020, we had recovered.
How have we recovered?
We had an economy where the power was stable, and so industries were running.
But recently, power was unstable.
I'm just giving you facts. Recently,
no, but I'm just telling you as well that recently...
But power is stable now.
But not too long. There are people who are still complaining.
When we had the challenge of power, we came to explain what we're doing, and we have done it, and we've moved on.
There's people who are still complaining that they are still...
We have no power crisis as we had in 2015, 2016. That's fact.
But we still have some
As we had. That's why I choose to be optimistic, as we had.
That's why I'm also saying that,
now,
but at least we still
fast forward, we have a country where we have restored teachers' allowance, we have restored nurses' allowance, we have supported private sector to come up with about 104 factories. We have an economy where power is stable, industries are working. I am looking forward to seeing a mid-year budget where no new taxes will be introduced. I don't expect to see new taxes. Key for me hearing or listening to the finance minister today is his strategy to deal with the fix the country now protest. I think that the finance minister should use this particular mid-year budget to address the concerns of the teeming youth, who, as a result of COVID-19 in the early part of 2020 till now, have gone into a lot of discomfort, and that is global. Thankfully, the IMF that the NDC ran to for bailout is telling us today that we are on the path of recovery since the COVID started going down. Fitch Ratings is telling us that we are going to end up being the fastest growing economy in sub-Saharan Africa. For me, I think that Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo in March 2020 told us as a nation that we know how to fix the economy, but we don't know how to bring people back from life. And so he's decided to spend all his time on getting and protecting lives of this country. That is done. What he is focused now is to see how we can recover as a nation, bring our economy back to life. And once he has done it before, between 2017 and 2019, I know, per the figures and per the facts, that he can take us to the promised land again.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The only way you will know that the economy is doing well is to find out from your owners here. How many people they have employed under this administration and how many people they employed under the NDC. That's how you know.
Well, Lawyer Abraham Amaliba is the head of the legal team at NDC, and also Dennis Miracles Abuaj is a former MCE for Akuapem North. Quick one, a happy birthday to Harriet Jamfi of JES, Just For You Creation. Happy birthday from Johnny Hughes. Also a big thank you to Zuri Azelia for styling me this morning. There's still more coming up with Johnny Cookie, some sports and entertainment as well. This is still TV3 New Day. We'll be right back.